All right. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the first session of our Farm Beginnings, or sorry, our Farm Dreams workshop. I'm excited to see everyone. We do have some new people I haven't met and some familiar faces as well. So welcome to everyone. If we haven't met, my name is Felicity Merritt. I'm the program manager at Farms, and I'll be facilitating tonight's workshop. We are also joined by Stephanie Bloomhagen, who is the executive director at Farms. She's going to be helping me manage the Zoom room and do breakout rooms and all of that good stuff. And we have Lori Martin, who will be speaking a little later in the night to give the perspective of a North Dakota farmer. So before we dive into it, I'm going to talk a little bit about Farm Dreams and what you can expect tonight. So Farm Dreams is all about providing you the connections and perspective to help you take those very first steps toward your farm dream. We know that farming is hard and it can be complicated and confusing to get into. So we're here to make those beginning steps a little more clear and give you a community of people that you can ask questions and make this complicated process maybe a little bit less confusing. So we will start with doing some introductions and share what our personal goals are and what we're hoping to get out of the workshop. We'll be utilizing breakout rooms for that. And then in the second hour, we will have Lori sharing her experiences as a farmer, and you'll have a chance to ask any questions that you have about starting a farm in that portion. Before we get started, I want to make sure everyone has a sheet of paper or a notepad or pull up a Word document or something on your computer. Just make sure that you have something to take some notes or jot down any ideas, thoughts, and questions that come up throughout the workshop. So make sure you grab that. And then one more thing I want to talk about is just some general Zoom guidelines. So I will ask everyone who is able to please turn on your camera. So a big part of what we're trying to do here is build that communication in that community, and it makes it a lot easier when we can see one another. If that's not possible in your circumstances right now, I totally understand. But if you are able, especially during the discussion and introductions, it would be great to have your camera on. And then I do want to encourage you to speak up throughout the night and share any thoughts and questions. But when someone else is speaking, if you could please make sure that your microphone is muted. That helps us cut back on that excess background noise or any distracting noise in the background. So any questions on Zoom, where to find any buttons, any questions on any of that? Okay. All right. I'm gonna make sure I got through all of our housekeeping items. And I think we are good to go. So I'm gonna move into some introductions, and these will just be your very quick introduction. Just say your name and where you're located, and we'll have some more activities to get to know each other a little more as the meeting progresses. But for this very first session, I will call on names as I see them on my screen. I will have you introduce yourself and where you're calling in from today. Let me put this on so we can all see each other. All right, my name is Felicity and I am calling in from Fargo, North Dakota today. And let's go to Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Bloomhagen. I'm the Executive Director for Farms, and I'm calling in from Bottineau today.
Okay, Lori.
I am Lori Martin, and I am in Bismarck, North Dakota.
Thank you. Lynn?
Lynn Park, and I'm calling from Dilworth, Minnesota.
Okay. Fernanda?
Yes, I'm Fernanda. I'm calling from Moscow, Idaho. I'm Brazilian and I live in North Dakota for a while.
Awesome. Craig? Craig, you're okay. Say, I'll move on. We'll come back. Paul?
Paul Lepp, I'm in Minot, North Dakota.
Jake?
My name is Jake Callender, and I'm in Fargo, North Dakota.
Okay.
Okay,
Craig.
Felicity, I think I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Craig Burns calling from Grand Forks, North Dakota. And my son is in the truck with me. So.
Okay. Awesome. Catherine?
Hi, I'm Catherine Bird, and I'm calling in from Fargo, North Dakota. I'm also at the library, so if I have to talk quietly, that is why.
And we have Sue and Krista with us, who you guys are free to quickly introduce yourselves if you would like. I just was talking with Sue earlier, and she is with, can't think of it, Farm and Ranch.
Farm and Ranch Guide, I believe.
Yes. And then Krista, we spoke earlier, who I can't remember. Was interested in doing a story on the workshop tonight as well. Okay, so for our first introduction exercise, we're going to go into breakout rooms. So we will pair you with one other person, and you will set a timer for the room for 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, I want each person to share what brought them to the workshop. So what is your connection to agriculture, your interest in farming, and what brought you to the workshop? And I will put those questions into the chat so that everyone can see them. I hope that everyone had a chance to share with the people in your room a little bit about why you're here and what you're hoping to learn tonight. So I will start calling on pairs and just do a short report out on why your partner is here tonight. So let's start with Fernanda.
Yes, well, I met with Craig and was really interesting. He's a social scientist working in a non-profit organization in North Dakota. What's really interesting, because I'm also in the same, and actually we focus in the question of connecting to agriculture and interests. So I didn't really ask him what brought him to the workshop, sorry. I just know his background. That was fascinating. That's why I didn't ask, I think.
Okay.
Okay. And likewise, I know Fernanda's got has a farm in southern Brazil, and is also, yeah, we got more talking about the work that we do and her research and so how that connects and all of that. So I'm Felicity and Stephanie, I'm not real good at following directions, but we had a good conversation.
Would you, okay, Craig, want to quickly share why you're here tonight?
So I'm here because I've dreamed of farming for a long time, and have been stuck on how to get started. And so that's brought me here. And I know Stephanie and Felicity from the North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance, and so I'm here to learn how to get started with this.
Thank you. And Fernanda, do you want to take a just quickly explain?
Yeah, actually, it's really aligned. I'm really interested in see your initiative because we will be hosting a workshop in North Dakota too with USDA connections with farmers, with producers. So this is more my science interest, but there is a personal, of course, interest since I have a farm in Brazil. And I do have a lot of dreams to that place, and I would be happy to see here what's your ways to approach that.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next group. We had Lynn and Paul. So Paul, would you quickly explain what brought your partner to the workshop?
Okay, sure. So I think Lynn owns Conjay Naturals, which does teas and balms, and is trying to figure out how to grow her business, or how exactly to grow her business, what she wants to do. If she needs to do her own farming or sort of outsource that.
Okay, Lynn, would you quickly explain what brought Paul to the workshop?
Yeah, Paul owns Beaver Hill. It's an organic farm dealing with a lot of salad greens and other produce. And he's also participated in some of the farms programs like the intern. So he's looking for, because he trusts your program so much and likes the material, he's looking for more information on what else you have to offer and what he can learn. Always learning.
Awesome. Thank you. And our next group is Jake, Catherine, and Lori. So whoever wants to go first in that group.
I can kick it off.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So Jake came to this program with a lot of really awesome experience from my perspective, already being connected in farms through an internship that he did last summer. He has a large 4,000 acre family farm. I think you said your mom's side. Is that correct? Yeah. That's more of a conventional farm that he's been able to glean a lot of experience from, and also being involved with the Farm Beginnings program. But it sounds like he wants to go a different direction than the conventional farming, and has a 10-acre plot that he's wanting to start working on, and has a smaller, like third of an acre that he's been doing vegetables, but he's really interested in growing fruit, which I think is amazing. And so, yeah, I think he's, from what I could tell, just wanting to learn more about that shift from maybe what he's learned in his own experience to how to apply it on his own scale. Is that right, Jake?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree.
Okay,
Okay.
Jake, why don't you go?
Yeah, I talked to Catherine. She is new to the Fargo area. She moved up with her family about 3 years ago. She came up from Iowa and is still in debates about whether to stay here or go back home. So location is a big proponent in her life. Works a lot with nonprofits, does a lot of gardening, composting stuff at home, kind of the smaller scale stuff, but is interested on kind of making that step up into like a small farm operation, something like a small CSA, or being able to bring products to the market.
Okay, thank you. And Lori, do you want to quickly introduce yourself? And I know you'll have time later.
Well, that's what I decided. I made the executive decision in our breakout room that they don't have to listen to my story twice. So
Okay.
I'll take my 2 minutes at the beginning of my hour, if that's okay.
Yes, that works out great. Okay, well, it was great to hear a little bit more about everyone's kind of background and what you're hoping to learn. And it's great to keep in mind for questions later as well. And so thank you all for sharing that. And I hope you got to know each other a little bit too. We do have one more kind of breaking icebreaker, getting to know each other activity. And then we'll take a break at the end of the hour and then transition into Lori's presentation at that point. So I have one more activity that is relating to your farm dream and just kind of sharing that with the group and sharing really like, yeah, dream big. What's your ideal farm in the perfect world? And we have kind of a unique activity to get us thinking about this. So what I'm going to ask each person to do is to find an item somewhere in your house, in your car, in your kitchen, wherever you are. You can get creative and something that relates to your farm dream. Okay, awesome. So I'll go ahead and get started, and I'll preface this by saying I am not currently pursuing farming. I love working with farmers and supporting farmers. I would love to someday start a farm, but it's not. It's a future situation. But I got this succulent planter that I keep in my office, and I think this represents my farm dream because I get succulents from everywhere, and this is my little propagation one. So I put like leaves from like succulents that I get from my friends, like a clipping from a plant swap or one that I had been growing for a while, and then I cut it and try to reroot it. And I think that shows my farm dream because right now I'm just trying to meet people and make connections and make little baby starts. So that is representative of my farm dream. I don't have a really strong vision of what it might look like one day if I farm, and I'm very happy right now just working with you guys. So it's a mix of a lot of different stuff. And for this exercise, I will just let anyone share. We have about 20 minutes for this one, so feel free to talk for a couple minutes each to explain your dream. And again, I'll just leave it open for whoever wants to share.
I actually had I grew watermelons successfully for the first time this year, and I cut them open with my parents the other day, and took out all the seeds because I was listening to a bunch of podcasts during harvest when I was driving truck all night long. And I got really into seed breeding and things like that and naturalizing certain varieties of plants to the climate that we're in and the kind of the colderness that we can experience and kind of seeing what we can do to manipulate the genetics, for lack of a better term. These are just a few of them that we were able to get out. But I'm super interested in not only like the vegetable side of things, I'm very interested in the fruit side of things. So my dream, if I could have it my way, would be running at least a 10-acre U-pick fruit system. It would be kind of more or less a polyculture type of system where I have many different varieties of different fruit. The main ones that we can grow up here is kind of apples, pears, plums, cherries, things like that. And then intercropping things like raspberries or strawberries on the lower levels below the trees, and being able to harvest things at a consecutive time. The way that I've kind of learned it as a grocery store method. So basically you start from one end of the field, and throughout the season you can work down to the other end of the field, continuously harvesting all these different fruits and vegetables all in the same area. So that's kind of more or less my dream. And then I'm also extremely interested in composting. I've studied that for about 2 or 3 years now and really fell in love with vermicomposting. So I've kind of doubled down on that this year, and I'm hoping to expand that substantially to be able to take in materials from restaurants and grocery stores or schools, being able to divert a lot of that organic waste that's ending up in our landfills. So at this time, I have 3 worm bins, and I'm hoping to double that by next year. But with farming, everything just takes time. Yeah, that's kind of more or less my dream with farming.
Thank you, Jake. Paul, you have your hand up?
Yeah, sure. So I actually have 2 items. So my first one is this book, Salad Leaves for All Seasons by Charles Dowding. Everything I do, Charles Dowding's been a big inspiration in how I garden. No-till gardening reduces the work, and his just idea that you could harvest all season regardless of your environment. You just have to be sort of clever about how you go about that. So Charles Dowding's been a big inspiration and sort of led me into a lot of other fields. And the second item I have is, this is my overwintered green pepper plant. So I'll overwinter these and plant them early next spring, like May 1st or so. Should have green peppers by the 1st of June or so. So just being clever on how you sort of get a jump start on the season. That's it. Yeah, so I just want to, be able to provide food and to people sort of basically all year long, even in North Dakota. So
Thank you. I want to try your peppers someday in June.
I can go next if you want.
Yeah, thank you.
So my item is mortar and pestle. That's what I picked up. And that's because right now I have just a typical residential lot that I took out all the grass, and I just grow all flowers and herbs and bushes. About 7 trees. But my dream is that I could either hire like these new American farmers, or someone who's looking for crops to grow the rest of the herbs I need, or I get more land and I do it myself or hire people. But the other part of the dream is to develop a healing forest. And so I do make incense, and so that's what the mortar and pestle I use it predominantly for. But to have all these healing trees where I could work with my own resins and leaves and barks, et cetera, is a dream for me. I do run a community medicinal garden in Dilworth that we open to the whole region. And it's free. And I teach people, you can grow herbs, a lot of them in zone 3-4. So I teach them how to grow them, how to harvest them, how to use them. Last night, we just had a class on making salves. And so I would do the same with the healing garden. It's so powerful with a lot of the needs that we have in society to have a place to heal. So that's my dream.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay, if I go next. Okay. I'm at the library, so I'm really without. I was going to go find a book, but I would have to look it up. So if you can see, this is a picture of my kiddos. And that's probably the biggest inspiration that kind of got me started on things. I told Jake and Lori in our little breakout session too that environmental issues are really what got me the most interested in agriculture. I have no background in it, more of just a love of learning. I have a background in nonprofit and journalism, so not even in the sciences or anything like that. But I found that learning about the environment, learning about composting, learning about gardening, and trying all of those things has just been a huge passion of mine and gets me excited every single day. And it's just been something that I really love. And it's been something that's been awesome that we've been able to do with our kids. So we have a 4 and 6-year-old, and they're probably my biggest motivation for something to be able to have that not only can feed my family, but then we can show them how to also contribute to our local community. So the kids and my husband and I, we work at community gardens in the summers, and we have our own garden, but they absolutely love it. They remember it all. They learn it all. They're the type that like cut open a cantaloupe at dinner and pull out the seeds and try and dry them and save them and want to plant them and that kind of stuff. Just makes me super happy and gets me excited. And so I would love to be able to take a passion that I have, keep learning and expanding on those skills. And like I said, not only be able to feed my family and teach my family some really awesome skills that we can continue to pass down, but hopefully make it something that's big enough that then we can contribute to our community, whether that's a farm stand or a CSA or a way to serve those who need access to that great food. So that would be a dream. And like Jake said, I don't know where that's going to be, what that's going to look like. We've moved a lot in our in my adult life, I should say. So I don't know where that's going to be, but I'm excited to kind of get some ideas and learn about what I can be doing now with the resources I have now to be able to hopefully make those dreams come true in the future.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we have a few people still.
So I can go
Okay.
next though I saw a couple on mute. So if you two want to go ahead. No. Okay. You can hear me okay, right? I just switched to headphones and system and everything. So hi, it's complicated, right? So the item I have is actually in his room now, watching his videos. But again, like Catherine, my son, and also just being able to provide for family, to have some stability in our, with access to food and so on. Jake, I love my worms. I got two big, I live in the city limits, so I got 2 big bins in my basement. And so yeah, worms are amazing. I'll just say that if you don't have worms, get some worms. But my dream for a farm beyond that is to reconnect people with the natural world, in the sense that we're very disconnected. And I realized that when my son was maybe 4 and we went to the store and he said, well, cheese comes in packages. That's where it comes from. And I'm like, oh no, we can't have that. And so just educating, getting people to reconnect. Also, it connects with my professional life as a social worker. I've always been interested in horticultural therapy. In the US now, we're talking more about forest bathing, which they practice in Japan, and creating a space to provide the opportunity for not for everyone, to make that, to reconnect, and realize that anyone can grow, right? You only, gardening and stuff, it's hard and challenging, but anyone can can do it with help. And that's all for now.
Okay, thank you. Fernanda, did you have an item?
Yes, I found this cute dog. He's ready for Christmas. And I think this connects to my dreams because Christmas is like always a memory. And I want to have memories, good memories from my farm. And also a dog for me represents company. And I usually feel alone at the farm. I would love to have more company. So that's the object.
Okay, thank you. Stephanie,
Would
did
you like-
you?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Lori.
can go. Okay, sorry. So I'm in a slightly different spot than most of you. So I brought a Leatherman, which any of you who are familiar with this tool, I have one in my cart all summer long, all the time, because it does 100 million different things. And I can't walk by a junk pile without having some inspiration for what I can use something in the pile for on the farm. I have cattle panels that I grow peas on, and pieces of rebar that hold down my high tunnel floating row covers, my low tunnels, and all kinds of things like that. So just being able to use a tool for many things, or repurposing something as a small scale vegetable producer in this state anyhow, it can be challenging to find resources, and being creative is a real gift or skill, honestly, that I think I have developed a lot in the last 10 years.
Thank you.
I'm happy to share, but I also noticed Kent Rohrer joined us, and they may want to share as well.
Yes, Kent, if you have access to your mic, feel free to please introduce yourself. If you don't, you can use the chat box as well.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm one of the shy ones. I guess I didn't turn my camera on. My story is pretty short and sweet. I'm kind of at a new crossroads in my life. I'm going to be retiring from federal technician service in 2 years. I guess my story is probably a little different in the fact that just this fall I sold out my elk herd. For all you people that are looking for a challenging enterprise, boy, raising elk has just been fantastic. Kind of figured it was time to get rid of them, and like I said, within 2 years I'm going to be retiring, and right now I'm just kind of looking for something different, something unique, something that I can spend my retired years in and not work too hard, but hopefully turn a profit. So that's kind of my story.
Thank you. That is interesting. Someday I'll have to ask you more about raising elk.
I love to talk about them. Yeah, they're a fantastic animal. It's a great industry, but comes with some challenges as well.
And where are you located?
Devil's Lake, North Dakota.
Okay. All right.
I'll be quick. Yeah. So I up until a few years ago ran a home-based bakery business, and I would like to get it going again. So there we go. This is some of the packaging from the granola that I produce, and the stamp of my logo that I was using to stamp my bags. I am Meadow Lark Granary, and I do home milling of the wheat that my parents grow on the family farm, and bake whole wheat bread and make baking mixes. And my dream is to really turn the business into more focused on the milling and produce shelf stable things like baking mixes or maybe crackers or flour blends, things like that, because I found the baking was too time intensive, especially when you have a 9-to-5 job. So that's my dream.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, everyone. Just want to double check, did I miss anyone? And it was great. I'm always impressed by just the variety of different people's interests and how we all end up here. So it's always interesting to me to hear everyone's background. We are just a little bit ahead of schedule right now, so we will take a 10-minute break and come back. Really excited, Lori. Thank you so much for joining us. I will quickly introduce you, but really, I'll give some time for you to introduce yourself. Then I have some prepared questions that I will go through, and we'll kind of talk through just some of the common questions that people have as they're starting a farm. So Lori and I will talk through those together. And then I do have time at the end for discussion and questions generally from anyone. So if you would put those questions in the chat as we're going, or write them down so that you remember them for the end and for that discussion. So like I said, Lori is a local farmer. She's located in Bismarck, and Lori has been involved with farms in multiple different capacities with the local food movement in North Dakota, farmers markets. And so I'm just really excited to hear from you. And I want to thank you again for your time. So would you be able to start, Lori, just by introducing yourself and your farm and what you have going on?
Sure, of course. Well, thank you for having me back. I feel like I'm a broken record sometimes. I appreciate that you still find value in what I have to say. So I'm Lori Martin. I own Roving Donkey Farm here in Bismarck. We're about 5 miles north of town now. It's shrinking every year, how far away from town we are, but not too far out of town. We live in a small development, and our property is a total of 2.5 acres. I have half an acre in production, vegetable production primarily. I do have a small fruit orchard, but that is primarily for value add, not for fresh selling. We have a small greenhouse that I use only for starts and curing at the end of the season, as I need some time off by the time the growing season is done. We have a high tunnel that is 30 feet by 72 feet, and we have a couple of large outdoor planting beds. We use a semi-raised bed system a la Elliott Coleman, for those of you who are familiar with the New Organic Grower book. It's kind of my Bible for how I farm. I do use other techniques, but it's where it all started for me. We primarily have vegetables in terms of what we grow. I do have some berries, and we do apples, pears, and Canadian sour cherries and honeyberries. Although the varieties of honeyberries I have are some of the first varieties that were available in the US, because I planted almost all of them almost 10 years ago now. There's much better varieties available, so I'm considering pulling some of them out to put some newer varieties in that have better taste, better harvesting capabilities, etc. I do sell some plant starts, but not as a real marketing channel, more just of what I have extra, and I have an established clientele that looks for those every year. And I also do some contract growing for a couple of other farms around. I do their starts for them. Let's see, how long have I been in operating? We started the summer of 2012, 2012 was our first year. So this was our 11th growing season. Weird to say that out loud still. It is pretty much just me, but my husband is a huge help with labor in terms of setting things up, fencing. He's in charge of our drip irrigation system. He is a land surveyor and civil engineer by trade. So I have the squarest high tunnel in North Dakota and the squarest planting beds that are mapped out using AutoCAD, which is funny, but perfect for my type A personality. And we have 2 children. Ella is 12 and a half. Owen is almost 9, and Ella has 0 interest in farming. She enjoys consuming. So I do ask her to help sometimes if she likes to eat the cucumbers. You can help me pick the cucumbers sometimes. And Owen, he loves to help, but help is a relative term as he has the attention span of a cricket at the moment. Did I cover all the topics that you wanted me to?
Yes, yeah.
Great.
One more, I guess I didn't put this on here. What's your market? Like, who are you selling to mainly?
Currently, sure. Currently, we are almost 100% restaurants, grocery store, and Bismarck Public Schools. We started out just doing farmers market, and I helped start Bismarcket, which is one of the farmers markets here in town. And we had a CSA. This was the first year we did not do a CSA, and I can get more into that as we move into the discussion further. And I've always sold to restaurants. My background is in food. I'm a chef by training, and I really, really like working with chefs a lot. So I kind of handpick the restaurants that I approach to sell to because they need to understand the value of my product, and some places just don't. And I don't sell to those restaurants for a very good reason, but I speak their language. So that's very helpful in order to give them exactly what they want and need. And some of the restaurants I work with, like one of them has an anniversary dinner every September. So we know that. And so when we meet in January to plan for the season, what he wants me to grow for him, we talk about specialty items that will be available at that time. And if he wants a unique color of pepper or squash or unique bean or something, I can plan to have that for him during that special menu time. So this year we decided to stop doing our CSA for a variety of reasons, but we were able to pivot because Bismarck Public Schools had a source of funding to spend more money on local food, and they committed to buying vegetables and meat and honey and a few other things locally. And I was able to supply them and kind of offset the loss of income doing the CSA. We're in a unique position in that the whole goal of my farm, beyond feeding people, which is a great love of mine, is that I want to be able to generate enough income to be able to stay home with our children. I'm originally from California. My husband is a native. I joke that it was in our marriage vows that must raise children in North Dakota. So we're here to raise our kids and be close to his family. And being a California native, it was a big adjustment and sometimes still is. But I have decided that I'm going to sprout where I'm planted, and I'm here for 25 years or so. So if I'm going to be here, I'm not going to be miserable. And so to achieve that goal, I wanted to continue to feed people. I wanted to generate an income. I want to be able to stay home with the kids, which has been much harder than I thought it ever could possibly be. But it's exhausting and rewarding, just like farming. So all that to say, I do not have to generate a full income, let's say. I mean, I'm able to generate close to $20,000 on a quarter of an acre, which is wonderful, but I don't have to. We sit down as part of our holistic farming planning every fall and talk about what the farm needs to make. And part of that is that I pay for the kids, basically, like activities and clothing and that kind of stuff. And as long as I'm doing that, the farm is doing enough. So it's not a huge moneymaker for us, but it achieves more than just financial goals.
Okay, thank you. Would you talk a little bit about how you decided to make that leap into farming? You mentioned that it was not your original goal. So how did you decide to move into farming?
That's a great question. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but I'm on my third career now, and I'm 46 years old. So it just goes to show that you're never too old to try something new. I have always wanted to feed people. I knew in 6th grade, I think, is when I decided that I wanted to be a chef. And that was a very different career path in the 90s than it is today. And especially as a woman at that time, it was challenging to be self-supporting, basically. So I took some detours and I went into high tech for about 10 years. And I worked in Silicon Valley for a while. And then I worked for the city of Oakland, California, running the network for the public library, which doesn't really seem like it would be all that connected to farming, but it's public service. And it reopened my eyes to the value of public services and how they are such a treasure to the community, whether you use them or not. And it made me realize that while I have an aptitude for technology, it was not filling my bucket. So when we had our first child and knew that we were moving here, we had talked about, like, basically we both looked for jobs. Whoever got the job first, the other one was going to stay home with the children. And it ended up being that my husband got the job first. So I knew that I would be staying home, but I've been working since I was 14, and I didn't think that I could go to not working. And farming allows me to be available to the kids during the school year, and then they can hang out with me in the field in the summertime if they want to or not. But I'm home, so it just kind of seemed a natural fit, and we were able to afford land here, which we would never have been able to have what we have in California. It's just not feasible, at all.
Can you talk about some of the challenges that you have faced since starting your farm?
Who knew all the challenges I would face? So we started with seed, with some seed money. Basically, we had earmarked $5,000 to start the business, and that did get us off the ground. I didn't have to take out any loans the first couple of years or borrow money from family or anything like that. But it also meant that we started very small, doing a lot of stuff by hand. And the manual labor, while I had worked in kitchens for 10 years and I understood what hard work was, this was a completely different kind of hard work. And I also started doing it after having children, which, as a woman having children, your body changes in ways that you just can't plan for. You just don't know. And I ended up having to have surgery for both of my children, so that made my body structurally unsound. So I started dealing with a lot of physical issues in the last 7-8 years, that I didn't have when we first got started because I was 10 years younger, but I have had two surgeries since then. And that has made us make some different decisions about how we run the farm. So a few years ago, we purchased a walk-behind tractor, which seems like overkill for the size of acreage we have. But when one broad forks and wheel hose 40 outdoor 50-foot beds and then a high tunnel and by hand, and in May your body is spent and you still have 5 months to go, you need to do something different or you're not going to farm anymore. So we made the decision to buy a walk-behind tractor, and our bed prep went from, I think we were at about 100 hours to less than 3. So I mean, that tractor has more than paid for itself. So physically, there were some challenges that I didn't really realize. And the other challenge for me has been more my mental health than anything. It took me a few years to understand that I was an entrepreneur, which seems kind of weird to say, but I don't come from a farming background, and I worked in corporate America, and I've always worked for other people. So learning how to set a schedule for myself, I still struggle with, but I'm much better at it than I used to be, because the workday doesn't end unless I say it does. And I grew to struggle with parenting because I couldn't balance all the things and realized that I needed help, but a lot of times that happened too late or very late, and there was just a lot of stress and strain emotionally and mentally that I didn't really understand or recognize early enough. But we do a lot of work on that as a family now. In the winter time, we talk about what the summer is going to look like. What do the kids want to do? What does mom need to get done? What's dad's availability? So that we can realize that we need to support one another, and the kids are getting older, so that's getting a little easier. But one thing that we do is we take a vacation in July, and there's like a 2-week window where I can be gone for a week. Almost a week can be a little bit long, but we leave and get a break, and we don't do anything that takes a lot of we don't go on educational vacations right now. We go on relaxing vacations. The winter is for educational stuff, brain stuff. We just go in July for a break. And that's kind of what I need to stay sane. Otherwise, August, which has affectionately been known as Angry August around here, it's now more Annoyed August, but we get through it with much less yelling than we used to.
You touched on this a little bit, but would you be able to talk a little bit more about the financial realities that you encountered in becoming a farmer, and just kind of setting your expectations around that?
Sure. Everybody's farm is going to be different, and what works for one family isn't necessarily going to work for another family. And like I said, we started with a small amount of seed money, which we had saved over time and didn't have to do any borrowing initially. But as part of this planning that we do, we decided that in our second year, we built everything in 2013. So in 2013, we decided that we needed to do a big capital build out, basically. So we were able to secure an EQIP grant with NRCS to get our high tunnel. And then farms at that time had a grants to grow program where you could apply for up to $10,000, part of it being a grant, part of it being a loan, to do whatever your project is on your farm that you say you're going to do in the application. And I don't like being in debt. That's just not something that I'm very comfortable with, because I'm not always secure in the fact that I'm going to be able to make enough money to pay it back, which has never happened, but it's just my personality. But we decided that we needed to do this high tunnel. We bought the greenhouse that year, and I bought my first tractor, which was a Glauser wheel hoe, along with some other equipment. And we didn't realize when we applied for the EQIP grant that it was paid after the fact. So we had to buy, build, and then have the high tunnel inspected before USDA gave us the money, which our high tunnel was $12,000. So we didn't have $12,000 sitting around. So we had to do some creative funding where I basically applied for the farm's loan, and we got that, and we were able to pay for the high tunnel with the farm's loan. Once the high tunnel was built, we got the money from USDA, and then I used that for what I told farms I was going to do. And I told farms I was doing all this because I had no other way to pay for this high tunnel. And they were very understanding, and because I ultimately ended up buying the greenhouse and wheel hoe and the things that I told farms I was going to be doing. And then we just made a financial plan to pay that loan back within a certain amount of time, and we just stuck to that every year. So that's the only time we've ever had to borrow money. We do apply for grants when something that fits for us comes up. There are things I would love to do that I would like to get grants for, but I just don't have the bandwidth to write a grant for them. I would love to electrify my high tunnel, but for rolling up sidewalls and some peak ventilation, but I want it to be solar. So it's a great NRCS potential grant, but figuring out how to write that grant and finding somebody that can help me build a solar system to do that has proven to be challenging up to this point. But generally, we operate within the guidelines of what we say the farm needs to make so that it pays for itself and the kids at this point. There was a year, and this was in 2014, it was the year that I generated the most income. I had an infant. My son was born in December of 13, and 2014 was my highest grossing year, and it about broke me. And that was when we really decided, okay, what does the farm need to make? I know I can make this much, but I don't need to at the cost of what it did to our family and my body. So figuring out what your goals really are and trying to stay within those and not saying yes to everything is something that I can personally say from experience is very valuable to learn as early as possible.
Yeah, kind of along that same vein, can you talk about how you have changed some of your practices over the years, whether that was in response to an environmental change, a market change, or just a life change, and how you have kind of adapted?
There's been a lot of change, which is a big challenge for me. I'm a type A personality. I like squares, and I'm not a big fan of circles. And there's a lot of circles in farming. So it's made me grow as a person a lot. And learning to embrace that has made my life a lot less stressful, and my family's too. But we started out doing farmers market, and we loved farmers market, and I still miss it to this day, especially since the one that I started it's amazing to go visit now, just how big it is. And we decided in 2015 or 16, I can't remember which year right now, that farmers market was no longer a good fit for us because our children were getting a little older. Our oldest had started school, and my husband works Monday through Friday in town. So we only had the weekends together as a family. And when all day Saturday is spent at farmers market, and when I say all day, it's not just the time that market's open, right? You got to get there, you got to set up, sell, get home, clean everything, put it away, whatever. that left us Sunday to get stuff done on our property. So we had like no downtime whatsoever as a family. And we decided that farmers market needed to go. So we grew our CSA at that point to, I think our biggest year, we had 20 families. Because then I was able to do all of my delivering during the week. So the weekends were then available for our family. And I still miss market, but a weekend event just does not work for our family right now. Maybe when the kids are older and don't need us as much, that would probably be the first thing I would go back to. But for now, it just isn't the right thing. And then this year I mentioned we stopped doing our CSA, which was another challenging decision to make. But I have a 12-year-old who has an active social calendar in addition to the activities that both of them want to do. And I just could not balance everything efficiently, both from a time standpoint as well as a mental capacity standpoint. My kids are both very strong-willed, opinionated, amazing people, which will serve them well as adults, but they really exhaust their mother. So the summers when they're home, I just need to be a little bit more available to them. Another adjustment has been, we talked about the walk behind tractor. We did purchase that a few years ago. We are a big fan of minimal tillage. So we actually have a rotary, we have a power harrow. I want to get the rotary plow, but that's for something different, but I haven't talked the boss into that yet. So the walk behind tractor has been a huge, huge benefit for us. But one thing that it did was it brought back a weed problem that we had gotten under control because we were disturbing the soil more than we had been with just the broad fork. And I was using a 3-tine cultivator on my wheel hoe. But whenever I needed to seed carrots and salad mix, I was not getting great germination. So I needed better soil tilth. And so that was the trade-off, was that we had more weed pressure for a while until we got that under control. Let's see, what else would I say would be changing of practices? I think, so when we were first starting out, I had, again, no agricultural background. Coming from California, where you can throw seeds in the air and they'll sprout. That doesn't happen here. So figuring out what varieties worked for me, once I figured out what those were, I pretty much grow the same 3 different summer squash and the same 3 different beets and whatever each year, because I know they work for me. During the pandemic, when there was an explosion in home gardening, there were seed varieties that I needed that were selling out 2 months earlier than normal. I normally do my seed orders in January. I now do my seed orders in December, which isn't ideal because I don't meet with my restaurants until January, and my restaurants are not thinking about the summer in January. So I kind of have to eyeball it and hope for the best. And even if I do end up with some changes after meeting with them in January, I can usually get, those few unique things that they ask for in anyhow and make room for them. But I'm a red wing, red onions do really, really good for me. They were sold out in 2021. No, I couldn't get them anywhere. And I shouldn't say that. I could have gotten them from like Gurney's or something like that, but I don't buy my seed from Gurney's because as a vegetable producer, you want to make sure that you have good quality seed. So that's a different topic. But since I couldn't get Red Wing, I reached out to my seed rep and I was like, what's the next best thing? And so she sent me Cabernet. Nope, not for me. So I normally have these nice big red onions, and Cabernet was like this, and they did not grow for me. And I was so happy to have Red Wing again this year. The difference is, like, I actually had some Cabernet seed left over, so I planted them next to the Red Wings. And my husband, who is not a plant person was like, those don't look the same. I'm like, yeah, they're not. Isn't that amazing? You can tell. And they're all red onions. So adjusting crop mix now is not my favorite thing to do because I know it works for me. But every year I have what I call like a crib bed, basically, that's just like, I'll throw in some things that look interesting just to see if they do all right. And if they don't get put in. And if they do, it's like, oh, I'm going to give those a try. So yeah, you just never know.
Okay, I have just a couple more questions and then we will open it up. Would you be able to talk about the resources that you use, both like educational resources about farming and then also your emotional or community sources that you rely on?
Sure. So I started out, I was you guys 11 years ago. I took well, there wasn't a Farm Dreams actually when I took Farm Beginnings, but I took Farm Beginnings the winter of 2011, 2012, and met a group of folks. You'll actually be talking with Marv Baker next week, who he and I were in the same cohort together, and I'm so grateful for that. Marv is an excellent resource to have. In North Dakota, he's been growing 10 years longer than I have. And being in Farm Beginnings gave me access to a group of folks that were like-minded, which 10 years ago, there were far fewer of us. And it also introduced me to books and websites and organizations that would help me get started. So I initially got too overwhelmed and read way too many things. And then a predecessor of Stephanie's listened to me vent on the phone one day, and she said, okay, pick one. Just do that one this year, and then you can change. And she was right. It made all the difference in the world. But like I said, the New Organic Grower was where it all started for me. And I try to read it again every couple of years just to refresh myself on the 80% of the book that I've forgotten. Ben Hartman is another grower from the Midwest that he wrote the Lean Farm books, if you're familiar with him at all. I had the good fortune of attending it used to be called Moses, it's now called Marble Seed, out of La Crosse, Wisconsin's annual conference. I was fortunate enough to spend a full day with him at a deep dive on how he farms, to learn ways to make the farm more efficient. And that Marble Seed conference is, oh man, it's amazing. If you ever have the chance to go down to La Crosse for those 4 days, do it. It's just such a great conference, like 3,000 farmers like you, and whether they're doing livestock or vegetables or fruit or row crops or whatever, just they're all passionate, excited, and they have access to things and new ideas. And oh, even if you can only do 10% of the things you come home with, it's still such a great inspirational start to your year. So I would say farms has been a huge resource for me, both financially and educationally. I do try to read a couple of books, new books a year. I'm kind of in information overload now, where I have so many ideas that I'm not putting into practice that I'm like, you know what, I think I need to stop reading and go back and reread some of the things that I have had access to and maybe have forgotten about. My local community, as far as emotional and mental support, or even just commiseration, you know, vegetable producers, there's not a lot of us even across the entire state. And when you find somebody that you mesh with, it's really nice to be able to send a text and like, are you dealing with squash bugs right now? Or, you know, can I borrow some tool, or do you need some help? Or can we just talk about how expensive vermiculite is right now, or you know, whatever. Yeah, your Farm Beginnings cohort is like, I'm thinking right now about that group, and 3 of the folks I'm in semi-regular, if not regular, contact with still. And just to be able to say, man, it's really dry this year, or the bugs are really bad, or I wish I had some labor, or whatever. Yeah, it's definitely something worth making sure you cultivate when you have the opportunity to.
I have kind of a general question now. How has farming affected your quality of life and your lifestyle?
Well, I have learned a lot more about food and agriculture and food systems and how your community can benefit from a strong local food system in the last 10 years than I ever knew before. And it's kind of crazy to think that, because being from California, where there is I mean, it's all local food there because it all grows there, but the process and way that the things are grown, I had no idea when I was there, and I would have made very different choices as far as what I ate or purchased had I known. But I have become way simpler. I try not to eat processed food. I mean, I do love a good Snickers, but not all that often. So, but I make my own soap now. I mean, who would have thought I would have ever made my own soap? But I've just really tried to keep our lives as close to nature as I can, which it's hard in this day and age to do that. But the things that we can have control over and still have a decent quality of life, we try to do. Of course, as the kids get older and exposed to more stuff, that's getting more and more challenging every day. But it's a hard job, farming, no matter what kind you do. But listening to you guys tonight, it's reminding me why I do it. And I'm really grateful to be here, because I was in your shoes 10 years ago and I had very similar conversations, and now I'm jaded and bitter and tired and whatever. But you're helping me remember why I do this. And I really, really appreciate that.
What would be your one piece of advice for new farmers? Or multiple, I guess.
Well, I'll try to keep it simple, and that's being flexible. I say that a lot. And I contemplated bringing a piece of silicone down here for my, what emulated my farm dream, is like bended in all kinds of shapes and whatever. And like, embrace the change. It's going to change every single year. The things that you did last year that have worked for the last 5 years, all of a sudden don't work anymore. Or you have to change your marketing channels because they just don't fit your lifestyle right now. The season of life that you're in is not conducive to XYZ. I had a really hard time with change. I still have a hard time with change, but it's not as hard as it used to be because I know what's coming. And having kids has helped me with that too. But farming has really been like, you have to be willing to change or adjust or whatever. And although not in the middle of the season, don't make any decisions in August. It's angry August. But yeah, just be flexible and know that you'll have to change your business, yourself, your whatever, and it's okay because you can always go back.
Okay, thank you so much. That was my last question. I will put us back in gallery mode so everyone can see each other, and I will open it up for any questions that anyone has for Lori about any of the things we talked about, or something we didn't talk about.
So I see in the chat Paul put bindweed. Paul, do you want to expand on that question just a little bit? Was that for me?
Oh yeah, no, I was just wondering what your tiller pulled back out that you were dealing with.
Oh, my biggest thing is purslane. I grow
Okay.
great purslane. I just have not found a marketing channel for it yet.
Yeah, right. You need it, right? Yeah. I do have a question though. So how do you approach restaurants So, because that's sort of the point I'm at is how do you get your product into restaurants?
Well, I got real lucky with the 3 main restaurants that I have, in that 2 of them came to me. They found me at farmers market, and we connected right away because we were in very similar stages of life. And they had actually just moved back to North Dakota from San Francisco, which is the area that I lived in. So that was kind of an easy transition. But I had someone connect me to Pirogue Grill here in town, which is our kind of white tablecloth restaurant. Just like made the introduction, and that worked out great. It's been a great relationship since. But sometimes it's something as simple as I walk in with my business card and some tomatoes or whatever, and I just leave them and ask. I try, like, don't show up during rush time, don't show up during a normal meal. If it's a restaurant that's only open for dinner, sometimes you can shoot them an email and ask when it's convenient to stop by, or just show up at the back door. Sometimes it just depends on the restaurant that you're trying to approach. So one of the restaurants I have is a pizza place, and I wouldn't show up at, lunchtime or dinner time, but you can just go, because coming through the front door, sometimes you're not going to necessarily see the owners or whoever does the ordering or whatever. So I have been really, really lucky. But if I was cold contacting someone, which I did do last winter, and it didn't go well, but that was that person, not me. I sent an email, and then I stopped by and came in with some tomatoes, because so here is a suggestion as I'm talking through this with you. If you look at their menu and you see something that's on their menu that you have, bring that. And like that place that I approached, they have the best quick serve salad in town, in my opinion. So I took some vegetables that were on that salad, and I was like, look at the cucumbers and tomatoes I have. They're so good. They would make this salad so much better, whatever. You can always, like, if you show up with food, sometimes that's a big win. So that would be my recommendation. Or if you know someone who knows someone that works there, they can help maybe make that connection for you.
And you're licensed through your county to do that? You don't have
There's
to
no licensing in our health district to sell to restaurants. Are you in first district?
Yes.
So
I mean, they're fine. It's fine, but
yeah, Jamie is really great to work with. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
And next week, Marv Baker will be talking with you guys. He's got a great working relationship with Jamie, I know, and he could sure help you. I mean, if that's a path that you're looking at going. I know you guys have a real burgeoning restaurant scene up in Minot, so there's some definitely some great opportunity up there.
Right.
I don't want to derail the conversation, but quick question for you, Lori. Do you think it would be helpful for an organization like Farms to, I don't know, contact restaurants on the behalf of farmers to sort of broker those connections? Or
I'm not sure. I think it just depends on the restaurant, really. I think if you're not the one with the product, that it may not be as beneficial. But if you personally, a restaurateur that you would love to see local produce in, then talk to that person and be like, how can I help you get this in your restaurant? I know that there are 10 growers in the area that could supply some of these things. Some places it does just really come down to price, and I don't generally sell wholesale. Like, my restaurants pay retail price for my food, but my retail price is close to what they're already paying wholesale. And my stuff lasts longer, and they get more, they get 80% of what they're able to use, 80% of what they get off the food truck, and they can use 95% of my stuff. So it ends up kind of being the same cost for them.
Plus they get flavor.
There is that. There is that.
Any other questions?
I have one. I just want to thank Lori. I just was creeping on all of your things while you were talking and added you.
You don't judge me by my social media. It is not my strong suit.
No, I'm such a visual person, so I wanted to like see what some of that looked like. But I just really appreciate your honesty and sharing more about your story. It was very inspiring. So did you start with knowing like what you wanted to grow, or was it based off of like, I'm really good at growing these 5 things, so let's start there? Or was it, I know these restaurants are going to want these 5 things, or the market sells the best, you know, with these 5 products, so I'm going to start there? Where did you kind of get your initial foothold, knowing that it's going to probably evolve and change throughout your time, but where did you kind of get going initially?
So that's a great question. And thank you for the nice words at the beginning there. I appreciate that. So the one thing I discovered, we moved here in December of 2010, and I had almost a full year of being here before we even bought the land that we're on. So we didn't even know we were going to be farming. So I got a community garden spot and just through whatever someone told me grew here in the ground and learned a lot. But one thing I noticed right away was at the farmers markets at that time, everybody was selling the same thing. Everybody had beets, everybody had potatoes, everybody, you know, like the only person that was different was the sweet corn person or the melon person, right? And I was like, but if everybody has potatoes and beets and onions and whatever, how do you differentiate yourself? What I discovered was that people were shopping with their farmer and leaving. They were not walking the whole market and seeing what everybody had. So I realized that nobody was selling lettuce. Nobody had greens. So I became the lettuce lady. I grew 6 different varieties of head lettuce. I did salad mix, I did kale, I did chard. I did other stuff also, but I really specialized in those things when we first started because nobody else had them. But I learned right away that did not matter because I wasn't someone that 80% of the clientele knew. So people would walk right by me and not buy, even though I had something that no one else had. So that was really challenging my first year. And at that point, well, actually, even prior to that, my first year, I started at, I think I had a 50 by 50 plot my first year. So I wasn't growing a ton. It was mostly lettuce. But I decided to grow unique varieties of the usual things. So I did lemon cucumbers instead of slicing cucumbers because everybody had slicing cucumbers. Let me do something different. I had to give away a lot of lemon cucumbers until people realized how delicious they were. But once they did, I was able to sell them, right? So I just did something unique, and that kind of became what I was known for at farmers market. And then we started that new farmers market, which had a very different feel to it. And people would walk the entire market and then shop. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You need to figure out where you want to market. We didn't start with restaurants. We started with farmers market. That's the easiest entry point is farmers market. And in North Dakota, anyway, I would say. But if you choose to set up shop in Fargo, you have Red River Market there. And there's a couple other farmers markets in town. And go and see what's missing. And, you know, especially in your situation where you you're not married to any particular idea yet, you can go and see what's not there now and maybe try to fill that niche. Or maybe there just isn't enough vegetables. Like that's what we run into in Bismarck is even if you have 10 people selling the same vegetables, there are enough customers to be able to support that. So for me, it just turned out that I noticed that there was no lettuce. You can grow lettuce all season long with proper variety selection. So that's what I did.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
I had one other question, but I don't want to take anyone else's time. So I'll wait and see if anyone else had a question.
I would say maybe one more question. So if anyone else has a question, now is the time.
I didn't really have a question, but just a suggestion for Fargo, the Red River Market, which I do. A vendor came in with mushrooms. Holy cow, you could not imagine the lines because that was so unique, you know, the mushrooms. But what I noticed missing is things like fruit and cooking herbs and spices. That I think that would be something that people would really be interested there.
Fruit is tough here. My gosh, I tell you, every year I have the best of intentions with those honeyberries and the birds are always 2 days ahead of me.
Okay, well, I do want to have a little bit of time for just some reflection, and then I will talk through what to expect for next week. So if you guys do have questions, write them down or let me know and we can try and address some of those topics next week. So we have what we call a harvest document, and I will pull that up. There's a couple of questions that we have selected for us to kind of think through, and then we'll write these down and revisit this next week, just to kind of remember everything we talked about today. So I'll put those 2 questions into the chat here. They are, what is one thing that you learned tonight that excites you? And then what questions do you still have? So again, I will share my screen, and then Stephanie, are you okay to take notes?
I am, and I've been adding a few additional resources to the harvest document as they come up, just so that those are recorded for people.
Yeah, so again, the point of this is to kind of get all of these thoughts on paper, and then we can revisit these next week. So anyone who's interested, go ahead and speak up. We'll start with one thing that you learned that excites you.
I can go first. I'm excited that there are other people who do composting and stuff here in the area. So I thought I was the only worm guy.
I would have to agree. I've been doing this research for 2 years, and I've done presentations at NDSU for my senior year, and everybody just kind of looked at me crazy. There may have been like one person that was from India that was like, "Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about," but everybody else was like, "What are you doing with worms? Like, what's going on here?" So it's really cool to finally figure out that somebody else is doing it too.
For me, I guess it was learning I'm not the only one starting small, because I have a hard time calling myself a farmer, or I have a farm, because it's not what I would categorize as a farm. And so I've always hesitated using resources like this or the USDA, which I have what I call farmer friends tell me I need to go and use their resources. So that helps to know starting small is legit.
That I talk to farmers who have that exact same thing. So I'm really glad that you said that, Lynn. And it helps us to, as farms, really think about our messaging, and when we're reaching out to people, a farm can look a lot of different ways. So thanks for sharing that.
I would second that. I definitely think that that's something that I was nervous about and am excited to hear others talk more about. And just to have a place to be able to dream up those things and talk about potentials is really, really cool. And just to hear people's feedback and saying those things out loud is different than putting them in your head and on a piece of paper. And so that's been a highlight for me tonight.
For the sake of time, let's move on to this next question. Any questions that you still have?
For
I
me
can go
personally,
first
it's
again. Oh, sorry, Lynn, go ahead.
that's right, sorry. As I say, for me personally, it's finding resources and like I know I need to do a major work on my soil buildup again. And this year I'm experimenting with leaf mold and making that. But where do I find the resources to get help and wisdom and equipment?
All right, for me, and I've talked to Felicity and Stephanie about this, how do I get land or access to land?
One of my biggest questions with farming has always been funding and not like going to a bank and getting loans and things like that. Because it's for a smaller farmer, it is very difficult to kind of take on those larger loans. So I think it's really important to get into like the grant aspect of funding on farms.
Any other questions?
A question I always have is marketing. I'm fortunate enough that I have the acreage, I have equipment, but I have no knowledge on marketing, how you could, market, not North Dakota traditional farmer size, but, probably bigger than a average production gardener.
Yeah, those mid-size marketing channels, I think, be something we can work on in the future. That's definitely a challenge. Any more questions? Okay, I'm gonna move on. I see that Stephanie has put a couple resources in here, and I'll share the link to this harvest doc and put it in the email. I'll email you guys as well after this. So we have a link to the Marble Seed Organic Farming Conference. So if you guys are interested, definitely check that out. That is a conference that a lot of farmers I've talked to find a lot of value in. And one thing that we thought of as we were talking through this tonight, farms used to have a physical library, and we have since transformed this into an online book giveaway because we're now fully remote and have books that are just sitting. So we are giving away books. You just go to our website here. You can look at the books that we have available, and then we can either, depending on location, figure out a way for you to pick these up, or just pay shipping and we can send any of these books to you. So we have photos up on our website here about the books we have available, and I believe that we have the New Organic Grower.
We have one copy, right? Yep.
We have one copy, but we have lots of books that Farms has collected over the years. The Soil Owner's Manual is very good for soil health. So I just wanted to let you guys know. I will put this into the chat here. And again, I'll send these out in an email. And really quickly, I'm running up on my time here. We'll meet next week, Thursday, November 10th. Same time will be 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock Central Time. And we have 2 farmers joining us next week. We have Alyssa, who is located just south of Fargo. She's a newer farmer, about three years in production now, who does cut flowers. And then Marvin Baker up in the Minot area, who's been a farmer for 20 years. And so we kind of have both of those perspectives next week. And then I will also be talking about our Farm Dreams course next week in a little more detail, our Farm Beginnings course in a little more detail, which is kind of the next step. So Farm Dreams is about your dream, and Farm Beginnings is about turning that dream into a plan. And it's really a business planning course. So I'll talk about that next week, and we will touch in on these questions. In the meantime, I'll send a quick follow-up email, and I will see you guys here in the same place next week. All right. Thank you all for your time. Thank you, Lori. And it was great to see everyone. Have a good night.